Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Oh, welcome to Waterfall. It's the CCW podcast that's all about saving water, saving money, protecting the environment, and combating climate change. This podcast is brought to you by CCW, that's the Consumer Council for Water. My name's Mike Keel. Thank you for listening. Now, there's been a shower theme flowing through Waterfall recently. Our recent episode 94, on the Everything Shower, has been very popular with listeners. Today, we're going to be finding out about smart showers. Intriguing. But before we dive in, I just want to let you know you can get in touch with this show. You can email podcast@ccw.org.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We're also on the socials with a handle @CCW Voice. Do check us out. So I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by Professor Benjamin Gardner, Ben, an internationally recognized expert in the psychology of habitual behavior and behavior change, based at the University of Surrey's School of Psychology. Hello, Ben, and welcome to Waterfall.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So let's just jump straight in. I mean, what is a smart shower? And why are we talking to our professor about smart showers?
So, the term smart shower means a lot of different things, but essentially it refers to a shower that has some kind of digital tech involved in it or kind of surrounding it. And that tech can be used in terms of for users themselves. That tech can be used to kind of customize their experience. It can be used to give feedback. For us as researchers, we use this tech to kind of monitor people's showering behavior and to use that data to understand how people are showering so that we can then deliver kind of interventions to try and reduce showering duration. So the reason you're talking to me as a psychologist is my interest is in behavior change, and I'm keen to understand more about how people shower because it isn't a kind of inherently private behavior. And once we understand more about people showering, we're in a better place to try and change it.
That makes a lot of sense. We did a piece of research at CCW where we put cameras at people's kitchen sink to observe their behavior, because obviously stated preference, what people say they do and what they actually do, I mean, it can be very different. And we often thought about doing a shower equivalent, but obviously that got kiboshed for obvious reasons. You know, really when we sticking cameras at people's showers. So you've sort of done this in a different way through using technology in a big old project. Can you describe that project?
Yeah, sure. So, well, first of all, I mean, obviously there are kind of ethical implications of monitoring people's behavior, especially in a shower. But the way that we do it is we have these sensors that can detect when a shower begins and when it ends based on four things. That's temperature, so changes in temperature. When the heat increases, it's likely someone's having a shower, humidity, and sound and movement. And so from all of that, we can detect when someone's having a shower. And so we can use that information to understand more about how people are actually showering. So this is a kind of long-term project that we've been doing for several years to collect information on people's showering behavior so that we can understand it and then use that information to try and change people's behavior, as well as looking at some of the factors that actually influence their behavior and influence their shower time. So the particular study that I'm thinking about at the moment is one that we did where we had over 290 of these sensors that were fitted in student accommodation at the University of Surrey. And what we were interested in doing was finding out if we use these sensors and we provide the sensor data, we kind of send that data back to the users in terms of a digital timer that shows how long they've been in the shower. Does that have any influence on their showering behavior? And we found that yes, it does. Once you have a timer that people can see when they're in the shower, it has a profound effect on their behavior in terms of reducing it. We found that the duration was kind of reduced by up to 43% in some cases, just by showing people how long they've been in the shower. And that, of course, is only made possible when you can collect this data reliably.
Wow. That's it. I mean, that's quite phenomenal decrease in shower time. I was smirking when you were describing your sensors, because you were talking about sound and movement. Is the sound just detecting bad singing? Is that how you do it?
Well, no, I don't think it picks up on the singing. It's more the running of water. I think we'll need a bit more kind of technological advancement to get to the singing as well.
So so these are all students that are doing this project. So they can see as they're having the shower how long it takes? Is that how it works, or are they told after the event?
Well, no, they see as they're doing it. I mean, these sensors, they're kind of, you can think of them as sensor timers. So they are sensors, and as soon as you get into the shower and start the shower, the timer starts. Now, what you can do is you can cover up the display on the timer so that people can't see it. And we have done this before where we have sensors just to look at how do people shower when there's no feedback on their duration. But if you leave it unblinded, then yes, it literally just starts a kind of clock as soon as they get into the shower. And it seems that, as I said, that has quite an influence on their showering duration.
That is something that is so simple as just having a clock. That's fascinating, because water companies quite commonly have been dishing out things like those egg timers that time 3 minutes or whatever. I've not seen compelling evidence to say how well they work, but it feels like there's a difference between obviously seeing an actual number compared to, I don't know, just having an egg timer. Yeah, you've tried different ways of showing time.
As yet, no, we haven't tried showing different ways of showing the time, but I think that is a really interesting point. Now, actually, with the egg timers, I think the key difference between that and a digital timer that just shows you how long you've spent in there is that with an egg timer, if the time runs out, then it feels like, right, I failed. So therefore, you can go for as long as you want because you failed and you have no further feedback on how much you failed by or anything. So the only thing you'd really register as the person in the shower is, I have not managed to do this. Whereas with a digital timer, people can interpret it in loads of different ways. Someone might get in and think, okay, I'm going to try and keep this to 5 minutes. Someone else might think I'm going to try and keep it to 1 minute, 2 minutes. Other people might think I'm going to try and keep it to, I'm going to try and do less than the day before. So people can use this information in all sorts of ways. But I think the other thing about the timer, the digital timer is, I think it's so kind of salient, that information, it's clear, crystal clear, you can clearly see it. And I think what that does is it kind of draws people's attention in and it snaps them out of autopilot, because a lot of what we do is when we're in the shower, we're not thinking about what we're doing. We're not thinking, I must do my hair, I must do my arm. We're probably thinking about something completely different. And that's the nature of a habitual behavior. It's something that you can do without thinking about what you're doing. So it allows you to think about something else. Now, putting a timer in front of someone snaps them out of it. And it becomes, as I said, it might be a challenge for some people, but whatever it is, it grabs your attention, gets you out of autopilot and gets you more engaged with thinking about reducing your shower time.
Wow, that was a really clear answer there. And you just said snapped out of autopilot, which was exactly what I was going to say. So you're a step ahead of me here. How big is the display?
It's quite small. I mean, it's probably the size. There are all sorts of different products on the market, but the one we use is probably no bigger than the palm of your hand. But as I said, it's so clear. I mean, I've got one in my shower, so I can attest to this. It's,
I've got one.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and they're quite cheap as well. Really simple to stick onto the side. There's no wiring involved, but it just introduces something new into the shower experience. And it means that you can shower as you normally would. It's just that you're more aware of what you're doing.
So you've got sensors that will automatically collect the data and send it back, capture it for your analysis, right? As part of the academic research. Does the shower clock start automatically, or does the individual have to then press a button, manually do it?
No, the shower sensor starts automatically as soon as it detects those 4 things: the temperature, humidity, movement, and sound. So it will start pretty much automatically. But yes, the other point that you make there, the really important one, is this sensor timer actually stores information on showering episodes, as I call them, and then we get that information kind of transmitted to us. It's stored in a kind of central database. So it means that we can collect data on so many showering episodes. And what we have at the University of Surrey is we have our living lab, which is where we install these sensors, and we're installing more tech, and I can talk about that later. But we install these into student accommodation. And of course, students kind of occupying their rooms for, well, at the University of Surrey, at least 22 weeks a year. So we can track them over time, or we can track their behavior over time. And we don't actually have to go in and do anything, because all of this information is kind of automatically transmitted to us.
How long have you been running the project?
This project has been running, I'm not entirely sure because it was running before I even arrived at Surrey, but I think it's been running for at least 4 years now.
Wow. So I was trying to work out how many episodes you might have had of showers. Yeah. Yeah. You must be up tens of thousands.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, 190 say people are showering. Yeah. I mean, if you're disgusting like me, maybe every 2 days.
No, we've got hundreds of thousands. I mean, in this one project, in this one write-up that we did, we had 290 sensors. Most of them were in shared showers, so of course they're going to be used more than once a day. And that was tracked over 39 weeks, and we had over 86,000 showering episodes just from that. So that is a great amount of information. And of course, the other thing that's good about student accommodation is that you have new students coming in each year. So you can really start to play around with, we can put messages in there when they're not there. And there's a lot that we can do. We can kind of play around with water pressure and all sorts of things, and then study how it affects people's behavior.
And did you do the whole, slicing by different demographic groups? Can you see difference? Scottish people may have slightly lower standards than other people, for example. That's what my family tell me. But can you do that kind of thing with this research?
Yes and no, because when you put one of these sensors into a shared shower, you're never sure who's using it because you can't tell the individual. But what we have done is we've prioritized fitting these sensors in ensuite bathrooms so that we can assume that most of the time it will be one person that's using it. I mean, you may have people staying over and so on, but the point is that we'd assume that most of these showering episodes registered in a particular room during teaching time, during the teaching term, is going to be one person. So with that in mind, we can assume that, these kind of patterns that we might see is going to be how an individual's changing their showering behavior. Now, what we don't get from the shower sensor is any sense of who's using it. So what we've had to do in our research is, and of course, all of this is done with full ethical approval, we have had to seek approval to find out about some of the demographics of people who are in these ensuite student accommodation rooms so that we can start to say, okay, right, now we can piece together gender effects and this kind of stuff. I mean, there's so much data there. We're still working on a lot of these analyses, but in theory, that's possible. It's just that the sensor itself doesn't give us that information.
Yeah. So from what you've been sharing so far, there's that very, very clear message that if you have that information on how long your shower is, that will allow you to snap out of autopilot and maybe make different choices. Are you doing other things as part of this project, other behavioral techniques, other nudges to understand what might work, what doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, our team's also done work on testing different messages. So testing messages about kind of climate change, testing messages that say, try and keep your shower to 5 minutes, messages of hope. We've done things, we've recently, I mean, we haven't finished analyzing these data, but we've run a study where we've given messages on what people might do differently to try and reduce their shower time. So, turn off the shower when you're lathering up versus, try and speed up the things that you're doing or try taking fewer showers. Now, interestingly, there's no kind of consistent pattern that comes out from the studies that we've done in terms of what works, other than if you give someone something in the shower, whether that's, it's always a timer, but then if you add a message on top, sometimes that can increase the effectiveness of it. I mean, we did find in one of our studies that actually it had the complete opposite effect, that when you gave certain messages alongside a timer, it meant people were showering for longer. So there's still a lot for us to get our heads around in terms of why, what seems to work on top of these timers. But we do know we're onto something, certainly with the timers.
I mean, there's certainly no silver bullet to this stuff, because for ages we'd been banging on about playing your favorite song, or a 2-minute song 2 by Blur is 2 minutes long. I use that. I actually do that, and I go, right, challenge myself. There's the song, bang it on, have your shower, 2 minutes, bosh. But then I speak to other people, and I think this just makes your point that people respond to different things. They go, yeah, play my favorite song, I enjoy that, so I just put it on repeat because I love it. And it's a bit like the egg timer, and they go, oh well, I'll just put it on repeat. So they've lost you've lost the kind of challenge element, the timing element, because they're just going out and just enjoying my tunes now. And so that won't work for some people.
No, I don't think it will. And I think it is because psychologically, if you have, say, a song that you know, and well, if you just say you're going to try and shower before this song finishes, psychologically, what happens is you get to a point where when the song finishes, if you've gone over that, it kind of doesn't matter how much you've gone over that. You've gone over it, you've failed. Whereas with a timer, for example, if you set yourself a target of, I don't know, 3 minutes, if you've managed to do it in 3 minutes and 2 seconds, that's better than 4 minutes. So I think it just gives you more information. It gives you more freedom to just kind of do it your way, in a way that, trying to get it done in a certain amount of time and knowing either you have or haven't met that target kind of doesn't.
And what's next then? What's the sort of build on this research? You're obviously getting more and more data as you go along, which is obviously a really useful thing from a research point of view. But where do you want to take it?
Well, I mean, there's kind of two ways in which we want to expand it. One is we need to make more of the data that we've got to try and understand more in terms of the determinants of shower time. And the other thing is, the other way that we want to expand it is to test out new ideas for modifying shower time. So certainly in terms of understanding, I mean, one of the things that we've looked at water pressure, for example. So if you look at, funnily enough, quite an unexpected finding, but what we find is when people are taking showers and the water pressure is higher, they actually spend less time in the shower because they feel like they've got clean quicker than they would if they were kind of under a lower pressure shower. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of understanding the behavior and working out not only some of the kind of psychological factors, like what do people feel about this experience and what makes people shower and why do they shower and this kind of thing, but also kind of structural influences like the water pressure, like the water flow. And then, yes, we want to expand in terms of testing out new ideas as well. Now, more broadly, what we're doing is we're kind of building up our living lab infrastructure so that we're not only looking at showering, but looking at, trying to look at water across the bathroom context and ideally across the entire house. So we're trying to scale this up in every way possible, essentially.
Oh, I mean, I would love to come and see your living lab. Like, it would be awesome to find out what you're doing more widely on that. Do you get into some of the more philosophical topics about like what is clean, because you can ask some people and they will say, if I do not have a shower every day, I do not feel clean. And I know some people say, well, I have to shower morning and evening or I don't feel clean. And you kind of go, well, what are you doing? Like, you in a triathlon, are you going down the gym, are you digging the garden, why are you not feeling clean? No, I'm just sitting at my desk or whatever. And I've been fascinated by this, and I'm interested in whether this is something that has been dug into academically.
We haven't done the research on that, but it's certainly something that I'm interested in, because it's one thing getting, some numbers from a sensor, but it's another thing actually understanding what's going on there. And yeah, I completely agree that we need to do more work on that. Part of the problem is, I think, because people do a lot of these behaviors on autopilot and without thinking about it, when you ask them, for example, why did that shower take this amount of time, or at what point did you feel clean, they probably don't know, because time has passed and they weren't even thinking about it at the time. So ideally, I think what we'd want to do, and we have had discussions about doing this, is try and, create a kind of showering context in which people can tell us, immediately after having that shower or as close to the event as possible about their experiences. But no, we haven't done that research yet, but I'm very keen to do that.
Oh, we would love to keep in touch with you about that, because I think that sort of thing is really fascinating. And it's a sort of conversation that, because how you feel about being clean is a very personal thing. I don't think people talk about that enough. And it's something that I think we should be touching on, because I think it's important, particularly in the context of a water constrained world. Has there been any surprises then coming out of it that you just didn't really see coming until?
I think the main surprise that we've come across so far has been this influence of water pressure, that in fact, the higher the pressure, the less time you spend, because we would assume that, the manufacturers are very much focusing on how can we make a great experience for people. But actually, for a lot of people, the shower isn't a kind of, yes, we want a kind of luxurious experience while we're in the shower, but at the same time, we're just there to shower, or a lot of people are just there to shower. So I think that was something that really struck us as being quite different. But I think there's so much to learn here about individual preferences and so on. The other thing, one other finding that did surprise us, although I've been saying that shower timers are effective for reducing shower time, actually there's a more nuanced message here, that in showers that didn't have the timer giving them feedback, but we collected sensor data, what we found was over the academic year, students' shower time actually went up. But when we gave them a timer, it stayed still. So in relative terms, the timer was effective at reducing. Effectively, it prevented the increase that we saw in those who didn't have a timer. But I think the surprising finding there is that shower time seems to increase. I don't know why that is. It could be seasonal effects, that later on in the project duration was as we were getting to summer. So people may have just felt they had more, they needed to get clean more because they've been sweating or whatever it is. Or maybe because we're studying students, it was as they moved towards exam time, in which case maybe it was a stress, a well-being type thing. There's so much that we need to learn. So as I said, surprising findings in terms of patterns that we found, but there's a lot more to be done to understand those patterns.
And were the students actually paying for the water, or was it just they paid a flat rate for living in the student halls?
No, they pay a flat rate, which obviously covers their water, but no, there's no incentive for them. I mean, they're not paying for the amount of water that they use. So there's no reason why this thing should work, really, because all it is just telling you this is how long you've spent. So it seems that, as I said, we think it's because it snaps people out of autopilot, makes them think about what they're doing. For some of them, it becomes a bit of a challenge. Whatever the reason is, it just seems to work.
I keep my brain keeps coming back to the display and whether there's any connection between. It sounds slightly ridiculous, but if you had a really bigger clock, would that have a bigger impact? Is that something you looked at? So I know that sounds stupid, but
we haven't looked at that. I mean, we've only used one sensor that has one kind of display, but yes, certainly I'm aware of other sensors that are now available that not only tell you time, but also have can play sounds, can kind of flash up in different colors. So I think again, there's more research to be done to find out what's the best way to give people feedback. Is it to show them a time? Is it to give them an alarm? Is it to kind of gradually turn red as it's becoming, as they're spending longer in there? But no, in terms of sensor size, I haven't thought of that. But I mean, it would work in terms of drawing their attention to it.
Yeah. So in terms of stickability, do you do anything? I keep giving you more research ideas. But once they've moved out and then gone into a regular shower, do they revert? Do you have any information on what they then do, like the stickability of behavior change?
As yet, no. And that is because we have studied the behavior of many students, but we don't actually know the identity of any of those students for ethical reasons. And I should point out as well, this is all completely unobtrusive and, we have full ethical approval to do this. But it is a covert study in that if students haven't been checking, then they won't even know that their behavior is being monitored. But that also means that we cannot then go in and track them afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a longitudinal study, I think they're called, where you do that over time, I think would be really fascinating. Again, something that we'd be very interested in to see what works over time, and also just tracking people as they go through different sort of phases of life. Because, you're a student and maybe you want to be cleaner because you want to attract a partner. There might be, for example, or whatever. Oh, and then you settle down, you buy an allotment, you get really dirty. So then you wash, just understanding that stuff. And, and to me, it's clearly very complicated and very nuanced, but there's a lot of potential there, I think, for trying to uncover what might work with certain people at certain phases of life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and on that point, I mean, one of the downsides of what we're doing, well, is a kind of double-edged sword. But as I said, students are a kind of transient population. So we have a sensor that's fitted in a room. And even if it's in an ensuite, yes, it will track one person for a certain amount of time, but then the next year it will track someone else. So we can't do that kind of longitudinal research. But another way that we're trying to scale this up is we want to fit these into households and then be able to collect data from households for part of our projects. And that would be fascinating because then we actually could track people, assuming people stay in that house, and would be able to capture that. yeah, we would be able to track people in terms of their use over, years.
For that, if you're looking for people, is that something that you actually are looking to do?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of realities of academic research is that we have to put in kind of funding proposals to do all of this. So we need to get funding to do it. But yeah, we certainly want to do a study where we put these in households and study it that way.
Certainly something that would be very interested in getting involved in. So we can pick that up outside of the podcast. Yeah. Do you know how much water then you've saved in total from this work?
No. And that is because it's so difficult because there are so many different variables involved that, you have to factor in the pressure, there's so many different things that you have to factor in. It's really difficult to put a number on it. But what we can say is, roughly speaking, in terms of percentages, as I said, I mean, up to 43% decrease from these timers. But no, and also, of course, the shower itself. Some people have insanely high flow showers. Other people have more kind of, trickling type showers. So it's really difficult to put a figure on it. But we do know that we certainly saved a lot of water.
Yeah. So this has been fascinating, and I could keep asking you lots more questions on this because it's really interesting to hear what you're up to. We always ask our guests a question at the end about your own personal water use and whether you know your own personal water use in terms of how much you use per day. So do you know, Ben?
I have no idea. But what I do know is how long my showers take because I have a sensor in there. So I know that most of the time, because I am good and I turn off the shower when I'm lathering up, most of the time I can get that done in under 2 minutes. But this goes back exactly to the point that I was making, that people don't know how much water they use. And yeah, giving people these time. I mean, if you could give someone information that not only shows the time they've spent, but also how much water that they've used, that would kind of empower them more when it comes to reducing their water use. But no, through doing this research, I've certainly taken steps to reduce my water use. But as to how much I use, no, sorry.
And you're not a water meter?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Oh. Right, but that's another conversation.
I'm very open to having one, but I don't.
Well, a water meter calculator on CCW's website, and it takes about 2 minutes to use, and it will tell you whether you and your household would be worth you swapping. So you should check that out at CCW's website. Ben, it's been great speaking to you. I've really enjoyed this, and I think there's a kind of really clear message about just how that bit of information that can snap you out of autopilot can be so important to help change those behaviors. So yeah, thank you for coming on to Waterfall. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. And I just want to remind all our guests that we've got an extensive back catalogue of episodes. If you don't have time, we've also got mini versions. So you basically got all the content in about half the time. So it's worth checking those out too. Don't forget, you can leave us a review, particularly on Apple, Spotify would be appreciated. Apparently the algorithm loves it. And get in touch, podcast@ccw.org.uk. And if you do want to share your shower tips and your short shower tips, you can let us know on social media as well. And tag us, film your tips, maybe not in your shower, film your tips and tag us at CCW Voice. So that's all we've got time for on this episode of Waterfall. Thanks very much for listening.